Thank you, Kelleher, for choosing this commencement, and thank you very much for the Minister for taking the time to come in. The question is to ask you about traveller education levels and attainment, and I suppose really specifically what is in place to address the stark figures that were published. I'd like to start by restating the situation for Irish travellers, that it's dire in terms of education and that urgent action is needed. It applies across the piece to health, housing, education and employment, and today I just want to focus on the latter two. Less than 2 weeks ago, on the 12th of October, the CSO released its 2016 census data on travellers. Shockingly, that study shows that 60% of traveller men have a primary education only. Among traveller women and girls, just 13% were educated to upper secondary level or above. This compares to 69% in the general population. And the figure that really stood out to me, and which I felt was staggering, that 167 travellers out of 30,000 have a third level qualification. 167. These statistics are intrinsically linked to employment, with 80% of travellers listed as unemployed. If you haven't got primary education, or if you have primary education only, if there's very few people completing secondary school and only 167, it's very little surprise that people's participation in the labour market, if you're a traveller, is so low. Findings by the ESRI show that traveller participation in the labour market increases sharply as levels of education attainment increases, going from 9% among those with just a primary education to 57% among those with a further or higher education. In the Behaviour and Attitudes Traveller Community National Survey, which was recently published, 85% of travellers said that unemployment among travellers has gotten a lot worse or no better over the last 5 years. And this is so disappointing, particularly as Minister in your previous role, the addressing and creation of jobs in Ireland was one of the great success stories. But it's a real pity that this particular group of people, because of poor education, are also unemployed in number. So, Minister, education is key to improving the employment and life outcomes for the traveller population. And I want to know what measures you are working on, or new measures you will introduce to increase traveller participation. The State's track record in this issue is very, very poor. As you will know, in 2011, all additional educational supports aimed at travellers specifically were eliminated. The Travelling and Austerity report shows us that the state spending on traveller education fell by 86% since between 2018 and 2013. This should be compared to the overall reduction in government spending of just 4.3% over the same period. I struggle to think of any other section of society that has suffered such a high level of withdrawal of resources, and I think it is a stain on the record of the last administration. The cuts included abolishing the visiting teachers for traveller posts, additional resource teachers and resource hours for traveller children, closing specialised training centres for teenage and adult travellers. In the 1995 report of the Task Force on the Travelling Community acknowledged that few initiatives in the area of traveller education have been a success and as successful as the appointment of the visiting teachers, a scheme that was introduced in the bleak 1990s. These visiting teachers worked across the generations, from adults to toddlers. They had a range of roles, from providing support, encouraging attendance, acting as an advocate and ensuring progress from primary to secondary and beyond. We need new initiatives similar to this to support the traveller community through education. 60% of travellers are aged under 25. The time for action to help these young travellers is now. So what are the current measures in place? And can you give us an update on the education points included in the National Traveller and Roma Strategy, which was published in July? There are some very specific education-orientated actions. So, in the light of the CSO findings that educational attainment among travellers continued to lag very significantly behind that of the general population, I really want to know what the Minister for Education is doing now and what any new measures he might propose. Thank you.